have with that character's experience. Like if you watch a movie that's really effective and really moves you and you find yourself in a movie theater crying, it's like not necessarily that you're intellectually thinking.
Sometimes the hardest part is discovering. It doesn't fix what you thought it would. There was a time when Jennifer Connelly seemed impossible to ignore. Her face was everywhere. Magazine covers, award ceremonies, prestigious films, blockbusters, independent dramas. She occupied a rare place in Hollywood. Admired by critics, desired by studios, respected by audiences. She possessed the kind of beauty that seemed almost cinematic by nature. The camera loved her, but that was never the whole story. Because behind the photographs, the accolades, and the carefully curated image of success was someone navigating a problem that Hollywood rarely knows how to solve. What happens when the thing you've spent your entire life chasing finally arrives? And it still doesn't tell you who you are. Jennifer Connelly's story isn't really about fame. It's about identity. It's about growing up while the world watches. It's about surviving an industry built on appearance. And perhaps most of all, it's about learning that being seen by millions is not the same as being known. Because while Hollywood celebrated Jennifer Connelly as an actress, the more interesting story was always the woman trying to exist behind the performance. And like so many people who spend their lives in front of cameras, her greatest struggle was never becoming famous. It was figuring out what remained when fame stopped being the answer. Early life. Jennifer Lynn Connelly was born in 1970 in Cairo, New York. Long before movie premieres and Academy Awards, she was simply a child growing up in a middle-class family. Nothing about her early life suggested that she would become one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces. Yet even as a young girl, there was something striking about her. Not merely a beauty, presence. Some people seem to carry a certain stillness, a quality that draws attention without demanding it. Jennifer had that quality. And in an industry obsessed with visual impact, that quality is often discovered early, sometimes too early. At just 10 years old she began modeling. Soon she was appearing in advertisements and magazines. Then came acting opportunities. For many children, fame arrives gradually. For others, it arrives before they've even had time to develop a stable sense of self. Psychologists often talk about identity formation as one of the most important developmental tasks of adolescence. You learn who you are by experimenting, failing, changing, growing. But when public attention enters that process too early, something unusual happens. Your image begins forming before your identity does. And once the world creates an image of you, it can become difficult to escape, even decades later. Especially in Hollywood. Jennifer's breakthrough came during the 1980s. Films like Once Upon a Time in America introduced audiences to a young performer with unusual emotional depth. Then came Labyrinth, a film that would eventually become a cultural landmark. At the time, nobody could have predicted how beloved it would become. But years later, entire generations would remember Jennifer Connelly's performance. Not because of spectacle, not because of special effects, but because she represented something emotionally familiar. The feeling of growing up. The feeling of wanting freedom while secretly fearing it. The feeling of standing between childhood and adulthood. Ironically, Jennifer herself was experiencing exactly that transition. Only she was doing it in front of millions of people. For young performers, there is often a strange disconnect between public perception and private reality. Audiences see confidence, success, opportunity, but internally, the experience can feel deeply confusing. Because adolescence is already a period of uncertainty, adding fame only amplifies it. The world starts telling you who you are before you've had a chance to decide for yourself. And Jennifer Connelly was becoming something very specific in Hollywood. Not simply an actress, a symbol, a face, an image. The kind of image Hollywood has always known how to sell. Hollywood has a complicated relationship with beauty. It celebrates it, profits from it, builds entire careers around it, and then often traps people inside it. For Jennifer Connelly, beauty opened doors, but it also created expectations. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, conversations about her frequently focused on appearance. Interviews, magazine profiles, marketing campaigns. Again and again, attention drifted toward how she looked, less often toward who she was. This is a challenge many actresses have described throughout Hollywood history. The world rewards their image while quietly overlooking their interior lives, and over time, that imbalance can become exhausting. Because every human being wants to feel valued for something deeper than appearance. Beauty attracts attention, but meaning sustains identity. The problem is that Hollywood often struggles to distinguish between the two. For years Jennifer occupied a strange space, highly visible, widely admired yet not always taken as seriously as she deserved. And beneath that reality exists a psychological question many successful people eventually face. If everyone loves the version of me they see, would they still care about the person I actually am? The 1990s became a turning point. Jennifer Connelly began pursuing more challenging work, more complex characters, more emotionally demanding stories. This wasn't merely a career decision, it was an identity decision. Actors often reveal themselves through the roles they choose. The performances become a form of communication. A way of saying this is who I am, or perhaps, this is who I want to become. Jennifer increasingly gravitated toward projects that explored vulnerability, trauma, loneliness, and emotional complexity. The glamorous image remained. But another version of her was emerging. One interested in substance rather than spectacle. This period revealed something important about her psychology. She wasn't chasing visibility, she was chasing legitimacy. And those are very different pursuits. Visibility asks to be noticed, legitimacy asks to be understood. Many celebrities spend entire careers pursuing the first. Jennifer seemed increasingly interested in the second. Then came A Beautiful Mind. And suddenly, everything shifted. The film became a major success. Jennifer's performance earned spread acclaim. Eventually, she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. For many actors, this is the destination, the dream, the pinnacle. The moment that justifies years of sacrifice, yet success often contains a paradox. The closer you get to the summit, the more clearly you can see what lies beyond it. And frequently, there isn't much there. Many performers describe major career victories as strangely anticlimactic. Not because they aren't grateful, but because achievement solves practical problems while leaving emotional ones untouched. The insecurities remain. The questions remain. The need for meaning remains. An Oscar can change how the world sees you. It cannot automatically change how you see yourself. And this is one of Hollywood's least discussed truths. External validation is powerful, but it has limits. Eventually, every successful person discovers them. Jennifer Connelly had reached a place many actors spend their entire lives chasing. Yet the deeper journey was only beginning. One reason Jennifer's story feels different from many Hollywood narratives is because it lacks obvious catastrophe. No massive public scandal, no endless tabloid drama. At first glance, that might make her career seem less dramatic. In reality, it may make it more relatable. Because most people do not experience one defining disaster. They experience accumulation, pressure, responsibility, aging, changing priority, emotional exhaustion. The gradual realization that life cannot remain what it once was. Jennifer continued working throughout the 2000s. She delivered strong performances, maintained respect within the industry, built a stable family life. Yet something subtle was changing. The center of gravity was shifting. Fame was becoming less important. And that transition can be surprisingly difficult. When you've spent decades receiving external validation, learning to live without needing it requires an entirely different skill set. One that Hollywood rarely teaches. Every actor ages. But actresses often experience aging differently. Hollywood has historically treated youth, not merely as an advantage but as currency. Aging can therefore feel like watching part of your professional value slowly disappear. The industry has improved in some ways, but the underlying dynamic remains. Jennifer Connelly entered Hollywood as a child. She experienced adolescence under public scrutiny, then adulthood, then middle age. Entire chapters of life unfolded beneath an audience's gaze. Imagine having every version of yourself preserved forever. The teenager, the rising star, the Oscar winner, the young mother, the veteran actress. Most people get to outgrow earlier versions of themselves privately. Celebrities rarely receive that luxury. The internet remembers everything. The audience remembers everything, and sometimes the hardest person to escape is the version of yourself everyone else misses. Aging isn't simply physical, it's psychological. You must repeatedly let go of identities that no longer fit. Jennifer seemed unusually willing to do that, and perhaps once re-edited, she slowly moved away from Hollywood center. Not because she failed, but because she no longer needed the same things. This is the part where many documentaries search for scandal. But Jennifer Connelly's disappearance from the spotlight wasn't dramatic. It was intentional, gradual, human. She kept working, appearing in films, choosing projects selectively, building a life beyond celebrity culture. And maybe that's what confused audiences. We are accustomed to stories of rise and fall, success and failure, triumph and tragedy, but real life is often quieter than that. Sometimes people simply evolve. Sometimes they stop chasing things. Sometimes they discover that what once felt essential no longer does. Hollywood tends to interpret reduced visibility as decline. But visibility and fulfillment are not the same thing. A person can become less famous while becoming more complete. And Jennifer Connelly increasingly appeared interested in completeness, rather than attention. One of the most fascinating aspects of Jennifer Connelly's life is that she never seemed desperate to reinvent herself. Many celebrities fear irrelevance. They chase trends, create controversies, constantly reshape their image. Jennifer largely resisted that cycle. There is a certain confidence in refusing reinvention. Not because you stop growing, but because you stop performing growth for public approval. She matured, changed, evolved, yet she rarely appeared interested in turning those changes into publicity. In an industry fueled by self-promotion, that restraint feels unusual, maybe even radical. Because modern celebrity culture often rewards visibility over wisdom, noise over reflection, performance over authenticity. Jennifer Connelly increasingly seemed comfortable choosing the opposite. And that choice may explain why she remains respected decades after her breakthrough. Not because she dominated headlines. Because she didn't need to. So what really happened? The answer is both simple and surprisingly profound. Nothing happened, and everything happened. She grew up, she succeeded. She struggled, she changed, she aged, she built a family, she survived Hollywood without allowing Hollywood to become her entire identity. That may sound ordinary. But in an industry that often rewards self-destruction, ordinary can be extraordinary. Many stars spend years searching for a stable sense of self. Some never find it. Jennifer Connelly appears to have understood something that fame frequently obscures. Recognition is not identity, achievement is not peace, admiration is not love, and public attention is not belonging. These distinctions seem obvious, yet countless people spend decades learning them. Some never do. There is a photograph of Jennifer Connelly from nearly every era of her life: the young dreamer, the rising actress, the Hollywood beauty, the Oscar winner, the veteran performer. Each image feels slightly different, yet they all contain the same quiet quality: a sense of observation. As though she was never entirely consumed by the world looking at her. Perhaps that's why her story remains so compelling. Not because she conquered Hollywood, but because she survived it. Hollywood often promises permanence, but permanence is an illusion. Beauty changes. Fame fades, trends disappear, audiences move on, time wins every argument. The question is never whether those things will happen. The question is what remains afterward. For Jennifer Connelly, the answer appears to be something deeper than celebrity. A life, a family, a career built on substance rather than noise. And maybe that is the real ending. Not loss of fame, not the disappearance of relevance, but the discovery that relevance was never the point. Because eventually every person faces the same challenge, whether famous or unknown: to separate who they are from what the world expects them to be. And perhaps the most successful people are not those who remain in the spotlight forever. Perhaps they are the ones who eventually learn they don't need it. Jennifer Connelly's story is not a tragedy. It is something rarer. A story about growing older without losing yourself. A story about surviving the seduction of external validation. A story about choosing a real life over a permanent performance. And in Hollywood, that might be the most remarkable achievement of all.